Let's observe a moment's silence for a minute of prayer. Okay. Good morning, everybody. I would like to welcome the CHED family headed by Chairman Popoy de Vera, my professor in LaSalle previously.
Mr. Chair, may I move to dispense the calling of the roll?
Second? Do I hear a motion? Second? Dispensing of the roll.
Second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Roll is dispensed with. Comsec, can you introduce the guests who are present right now?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. We would like to welcome and acknowledge the presence of the Commission on Higher Education officials headed by Chairperson Prospero de Vera. We also have Commissioner Aldrin Barilag, OIC Deputy Executive Director Lily Mila. Okay na. We have also Director Septon de la Cruz, Director Luisa Valencia, Director Kainhog, Director Rivero. We have Budget Officer Patungan, Chief HEDFS Manalo, and Chief of the Accounting Division, Miriam Miranda. Also joining us through Zoom are the officials headed by Dr. Lilian de las Llagas, Dr. Alibin, Dr. Adama, the Executive Director Benitez Haro, and the rest, Mr. Chairman, are the regional directors. Thank you.
Thank you, Comsec. We shall proceed. In the interest of expediency, we will dispense with the presentation and proceed to the interpellation proper. Yes. Okay. I would also like to acknowledge all 46 members of the House who are present through Zoom. Again, in the interest of expediency, we will dispense with the presentation of the CHED budget and we will proceed to the interpellation proper. May I request our members who will be interpellating, who would have parochial concerns, to kindly indicate already whether their concern is parochial, so that the chairman, Chairman Popoy, can already refer you to the person in charge of your concern so that we can proceed properly and expediently. Thank you. First interpellator would be
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, may I manifest that the Commission submitted an updated PowerPoint this morning. It is basically the same as the one that was earlier submitted, but we put additional information on the fiscal year that the data is indicated. So there are changes on pages 7, 8, 27, 31, 38, 39, 42, and 43. The changes are not policy or substantial. They are additional information on the fiscal year, additional data, just to make sure that Congress would get a better understanding of what is indicated in the slide. So I request, Mr. Chair, that on these respective pages, if there are questions, to please refer to the updated version that we submitted, I think this morning or yesterday? This morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chairman Popoy, I would assume that all members of the House have been apprised of these changes.
I don't know the Secretariat, Mr. Chair, whether they had given copies, but in the presentation, if there are questions that refer to these respective PowerPoint slides, I can make the necessary correction once the questions are asked, Mr. Chair. Hindi naman lahat, only on eight slides, and the corrections are merely to clarify the data that is being presented. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And the COMSEC has apprised me that the corrections will be posted through Zoom also for the benefit of the members.
Chair. Mr. Chairman, if I may, have the presentation been submitted to the Secretary, Committee Secretary just this morning? I heard. So how many revisions have been in place on the existing presentation?
The revisions, Mr. Chair, are additional information we added to the slides that were submitted yesterday. Wala namang major revision doon sa content. Dinagdag, for example, fiscal year 2019, fiscal year 2020, just so when the members of the House look at the data, they know what is the reference point of the data being presented.
Okay,
but
Mr.
there is
Chairman,
no additional slides, Mr. Chair.
Okay, in that case, Mr. Chairman, I just received the copy ng ating pong presentation for CHED. Having received this now, I was about to move for the proper presentation sana, Mr. Chairman, but I think it will take more time. But now that I have the copy, I will not move for that motion anymore, Mr. Chairman. Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, DS. We will now call the first interpellator, our minority leader, Bishop Benny Abante. Is Bishop Benny Abante on Zoom? Minority Leader Benny Abante. Okay. We will now proceed to the next minority member who will interpellate, Representative Stella Kimbo.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me po?
Yes, Representative Stella.
Magandang umaga po and good morning din po sa CHED family. My questions, Mr. Chair, are about RA 10931. Ito po yung batas na nagsaad po ng free tuition para sa college students. So Mr. Chair, I was looking at data on total freshman enrollments. At napansin ko po na for 2018, ang total freshman enrollments is 1.058 million. And this is slightly lower po than the 2015 number, which is 1.08 million. And of course, hindi maganda tignan or i-compare ang 2016 and 2017 kasi po may K-12 po for those years. So ang tanong ko po kay Chairman Popoy is, Ano po ang kanyang honest assessment po sa pagpapatupad ng batas na to? Maganda po ang layunin ng batas na to, which is of course to increase access to college education. Pero baka naman po may mga balakid po, may mga obstacles po sa pag-implement. Maganda pong i-point out na po niya, baka sakali po ma-address po natin yan sa GAA 2021.
Chairman Popoy of CHED.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The positives about RA 10931 is that number one, we have slowly increased the number of beneficiaries. In the first year of implementation, we had 1.18 million students who no longer paid their tuition and miscellaneous fees in state universities and colleges and local universities and colleges. For 2019, it has increased to 1.33 million students, not only because of the regular increase in enrollment, but because we added additional local universities that are covered by free higher ed. So we have increased the number. The more important is we have also increased the number of students who are getting tertiary education subsidy from 288,000 in the first year of implementation to 557,000 on the second year of implementation. So that is the dramatic increase in the number of those getting tests. This is on slide 7 of the PowerPoint presentation. And we have incorporated, or we have included under tests, the continuing tulong-dunong scholars that we had in the previous years. So overall, the number of beneficiaries has increased from 1.47 million to 1.79 million students. So the issue of access in the assessment of the Commission has really improved in terms of the total students that are benefiting. This increase in access, Mr. Chair, is not limited to state universities and colleges and LUCs, because the data on the test beneficiaries shows that there are now more test beneficiaries in private universities. So the areas where there is no SUC and LUC, the students of private universities were able to get the test from government. So we have increased access not only to public but also private universities. That is on the access issue, Madam Chair or Mr. Chair. And this is only one of the scholarship programs of the Commission. We continue with the scholarship for students taking up medical degrees in 8 state universities and colleges. We thank Congress for continuing to realign 167 million pesos per year so that they can come in. We still have scholars in agriculture in partnership with the Department of Agriculture and the Sugar Regulatory Administration. We still have our merit scholarships. So overall, the number of beneficiaries has dramatically increased both for RA 10931 and the other scholarship programs of government. The biggest problem that we are encountering in RA 10931 is really administrative in nature, Mr. Chair. With the increase in the number of applicants that we have to vet, the increase in the number of tulong-dunong, the manpower complement of CHED is not increasing. We are a very small organization. The total personnel of the Commission for the whole country is less than 1,000 individuals and only 600 plantilla positions. So in the region, sometimes only about 3 to 4 or at the maximum 5 individuals are handling the scholarship program in the hundreds of thousands. So administratively, we are really constrained and we're having difficulty processing all the documents. And this was worsened by COVID we ask for the indulgence of the education stakeholders. Talaga hong bumagal yung pag-reimburse ng tuition and miscellaneous tsaka pagbigay ng test dahil sa COVID. Unang-una kasi nung nag-COVID, nagsisimula pa lang mag-distribute yung mga universities ng test. Yung mga dinadaan ng test sa ATM, ang mga bata ay hindi makaalis ng bahay para magpunta sa ATM. Yung mga ginagawa ng payroll sa SOCS, hindi rin sila makapunta sa SOCS. And then yung universities that want to bring the money to the community were working on a skeletal workforce. So talaga hong bumagal. Yung submission naman ng documents sa CHED ng mga state universities tsaka LUCs, kailangan ho kasi sa auditing requirements ng government ang original documents. Hindi ho tinatanggap ang electronic documents eh. So hindi nila may padala yung mga papel sa Manila kasi walang courier na magdadala. Pati yung financial transactions, we realized during COVID that many of our processes are still manual and we have not digitized many of them. So dati ho, yung reimbursement sa mga SOCS and LUCs, naka-cheque pa yan. Hindi nila makuha yung cheque sa Manila, so we had to do electronic transfers, we had to change it. So the lesson for COVID is that we have to change a lot of our administrative systems, Mr. Chair. That is the biggest problem that we encountered, the administrative limitations and the manpower limitations that we have. Yung pangatlo siguro, medyo mabagal din mag-release ang DBM. Hindi lang naman po kasalanan ng DBM ito dahil madaming problema ang bayan. Pero ang track record naman po ng CHED pag ni-release ng DBM yung pera sa amin, in 2 weeks time, bumababa na ho yan on the ground level. But we are constrained because if the funds are not with us, we cannot disburse it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, Mr. Chair, nabanggit ko na meron na tayong 1.33 million na beneficiaries. Ang unang follow-up question ko po is, ilan porsyento po ito relative to total recipients, total enrollees, no? And then number 2 po, pagdating po sa admin problem po na nabanggit ninyo, have you been able po to cost out kung ano po ang kailangan natin para po finally po ma-address natin ang admin problems na yan? Kasi po talagang napapansin po namin talaga na napakarami pong napakahaba po ng delay pagdating po sa releases po ng cheque mula sa CHED.
Yung sa first question, Mr. Chair, yung 1.33 million, that is 1.33 million of approximately close to 3 million enrollment in higher education. So that's the actual coverage now of free tuition and miscellaneous. Pero pag tinotal, kasama yung mga nakakakuha ng test sa private schools, we are servicing or we are assisting about 1.79 million students all in all. That is more than 50% now of the total enrollment in higher ed. So more than 50% are receiving subsidy from government, either free tuition and miscellaneous or tertiary education subsidy. Malaki ho compared to any previous administration. I think the numbers would show that we have really provided very substantial financial assistance. And we thank Congress for ensuring that the funding for RA 10931 is sustained on a yearly basis. Yung pangalawang tanong ho kung ano yung sagot do sa administrative concerns, we are thankful that Congress has already passed through the committee the reorganization bill of CHED, because doon ho sa reorganization, palalakasin yung regional offices. We will even identify provinces that will have their own provincial office. And if Congress passes this, and hopefully we can ask our education champions in Congress to also push their counterparts in the Senate, yung administrative structure ho ng CHED ay talagang mag-i-improve. Kasi po, when CHED was created in 1994, if you look at the mandates of CHED, CHED was not designed to be an implementing agency in 1994. It was designed to be a policy-making, regulatory, developmental agency. But over time, most of the new laws passed by Congress gave administrative or implementation responsibilities to the Commission. Kaya ho sa regional office ho, kami ang isa sa pinakamaliit ng regional offices of any government agency. If you compare us with TESDA, for example, TESDA has 4,000 employees. We have less than 1,000. Because Congress did not contemplate CHED to be an implementing agency. That's why it's a commission. It is a policy-making agency. But because we have to implement congressional actions, lalo na yung RA 10931, talaga hong yung organizational structure ng CHED ay hindi nakadesign for implementation. Alam ho nung ating mga membro yan, lalo na yung mga nasa island provinces, halimbawa sa Mimaropa, ang between Palawan and Mindoro and the other provinces, hindi ho talaga namin mapuntahan lahat yung lugar dahil ang administrative system ho ng CHED ay hindi nakadisenyo for implementation. So the long-term solution is really a reorganization of the Commission, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, magandang balita po na over 50% ang coverage ng test. Pero dahil po may salitang universal po doon sa pamagat ng batas, ang tanong ko lang po is ano ba ang target natin for that? And magkano po ang budget natin for TES para sa taong 2021? Magkano na lang po ang remainder sa taong 2020? At tama po ba na meron ding 600 million na dagdag mula sa Bayanihan 2? And siguro ang related question na rin po dyan is paano ipapasatupad yung provision po sa Bayanihan 2 na isususpend na muna ang geographic prioritization po pagdating sa private HEIs?
Yung epekto ho ng COVID sa CHED is that a significant portion of the 2020 budget for free higher ed was no longer or will no longer be released to CHED because the payables are due in the second semester in January, because while Congress allocates money on a fiscal year basis, we implement it on a school year basis. And so in our discussion with DBM, we agreed that the reimbursement of tuition and miscellaneous fees due to SUKS and LUKS for the second semester, and that will be in January of 2021, will already be incorporated in the 2021 NEP. And it is already in the NEP that has been submitted to Congress. So, yun ho ang pinakamalaking nabawas sa RA 10931. Ang nabawas din ho sa UACTE ay yung 3.6 billion na realignment ng Congress in the 2020 GAA because this was labeled for later release. So the DBM has informed us that they will no longer release in a letter dated April 24, 2020, the DBM already informed us that the 3.6 billion augmentation or realignment of Congress in the budget of UACTE will be discontinued already consistent with the implementation of Bayanihan 1. Those are the biggest reduction in the universal access to quality tertiary education law, Mr. Chair.
One last question, Rep. Kimbo. Excuse me. Rep. Kimbo, I would like to request those members who are interpolating, who will be utilizing another member's time to take the place of that member according to his number in the line, so as to not unnecessarily disadvantage those who are lined up ahead. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, noted po. My last question, although hindi pa po tapos yata ang pagsasagot ni Chairman Popoy, pero ibibigay ko na rin po ang last question ko, which is about the private colleges. Kasi po, Chairman Popoy, ang dami pong nagsara na private colleges. So, ang tanong ko po is, may balak po ba ang CHED na tulungan by way halimbawa of maybe changing certain guidelines dito po sa pagpapatupad ng RA 10931, halimbawa po doon po sa breakdown po doon sa 60,000. So that's my last question, but then i-remind ko lang po doon sa previous ko na questions, hindi pa yata nasagot ni Chairman Popoy, particularly po doon sa target beneficiaries, kasi over 50% na po ang covered sa mga enrolled college students. So ang tanong ko po is anong target natin? In other words, anong ibig sabihin ng universal access po pagdating po sa CHED? So yun po, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, it's difficult to set a target because the budget is incrementally increased every year. But if there are proxy indicators of the demand, in terms of applications for tests, for 2019, there are about 400,000 slots. Ang nag-apply ho ay about 1.6 million students, if you talk of the demand. So if the demand side is taken, we can compute what is universal, but we're not doing it because we know there are constraints in terms of the availability of resources. Yun naman hong sa private schools, there is good news and bad news. The bad news, of course, is there are small private universities that have informed the CHED that they will not open the semester. That's the bad news. The good news is hindi naman po masyadong marami. It is, I think, about 40 nationwide small private universities. Ang tulong ho na may bibigay ng CHED, we have passed a resolution that if they reopen after 1 year, we will not subject their programs anymore to evaluation as long as they rehire or retain the majority of faculty members that are teaching these programs. Kasi yun ho ang problema, every degree program that a private university offers are evaluated by the commission based on quality standards, including profile of faculty. If they close and they retrench their faculty members, technically, they have to be evaluated with their new faculty members. We are dispensing with that, Mr. Chair.
So Mr. Chair, nakakalungkot po na kulang po ang budget ng CHED. Sana po pagtulungan po natin para dumami pa po ang beneficiaries po ng CHED. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Rep. Kimbo. In line with what the last statement of Representative Kimbo, Congressman Tyrone Agabas sent a message through Zoom supporting CHED's budget and any increases which may be proposed. The next interpellator would be Deputy Speaker Dan Fernandez.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. For President Popoy, this is much more on policy questions lamang, no? Kasi I was trying to look dito po sa ating pong copy ng presentation natin. I am trying to look at the yung pong parameters dun po sa ating pong Zoom online classes. Yung interaction po ng ating pong mga teachers and mga estudyante. Are there certain parameters that our students and the teachers must follow?
Mr. Chair, we are leaving that to the universities to design. That's why the policy we adopted is we give them maximum flexibility. Iba-iba ho kasi yung kakayanan ng universities, iba-iba din yung profile ng estudyante. What we told them is to make sure that the design and the delivery are student sensitive. And they should not open if they are not ready. Ang problema ko kasi sa ibang universities, hindi pa ready, gusto magbukas. So sinasabihan namin, kailangan magkonsulta sa estudyante, sa faculty, etc.
Okay. Maraming salamat po, Professor Popoy. But considering that the policy are being left to the different universities and colleges, I just wanted to tell you a story. No? Ito po ay personal ko pong experience. Umuwi po ako sa bahay, no? And then I saw my eldest son, a 21-year-old boy, na kumakain po siya ng tanghalian doon po sa aming table, and I joined him in eating. At habang kumakain po kami, medyo kinakwentuhan ko siya, but I saw him that he was on the cellphone at meron po siyang nakalagay na, what do you call that? earpod. At habang nakikinig po siya, kumakain, nagkukwentuhan kami. And I asked him, ano ba yung pinakikinggan mo? Sabi ko dun sa anak ko, sabi niya sa akin, Dad, nag-online class ako. Nag-online class ka? Okay, o sige. So, kain kami. Tapos, di na ako nagsalita, and then I went outside. And thinking about the online classes, ano yung magiging epekto doon sa actual na pakikinig niya. I was thinking, Professor Popoy, Mr. Chair, that somehow itong online classes natin, considering na online na nga po, somehow yung pong learning process ng ating mga bata is nagiging divergent. Divergent in the sense that somehow kapag andun yung bata, hindi siya nakaka-focus, considering that it is being allowed by the different universities and colleges na yung bata, hindi siya nakapokus. We have to set a certain parameters on those universities and colleges na dapat po mag-set sila ng standard na, for example po, Kapopoy, na dapat ang mga bata, hindi po sila pwedeng mag-video out. In a certain class, halimbawa 1 hour or 2 hours, or throughout, dapat ma-feel nila at maramdaman nila na nasa school po sila. Na hindi yung nasa bahay ka na nga, relax ka na nga, tapos pwede kang mahiga kasi pwede kang mag-video out. Tapos pwede kang makinig, pwede kang gumawa ng ibang bagay. Like for example, what I experienced, we were talking, we were eating while he is in an online class. In that sense, Mr. Chairman, yung estudyante po ay hindi po siya talaga matututo. Ang sa akin lang po dito, Mr. Chairman, is it possible na maging mandatory na kapag ang Zoom classes ay kung 1 oras po yan, 1 oras naka-video in po yung ating mga estudyante. Like in the class, kapag nasa classroom po sila, talagang po sila, naka-focus sila. Hindi diverted yung kanilang utak. And at the same time, Mr. Chairman, there are certain colleges na naka-uniform sila, di po ba? But on these online classes, we are not making our children feel that. Pag pumunta po sila, gumising sila sa umaga. Tapos, mag-online na sila. Kahit hindi pa sila naghihilamos, hindi pa sila nagtututbrush, hindi pa sila kumakain. Kasi makakapag-video out naman sila eh. Kasi hindi naman sila naka-formal na Can we somehow make a policy that remember, Mr. Chairman, we are installing not only the transfer of knowledge of the professor to the children, but also we are trying to instill the discipline. And consuming like 2 hours or 3 hours a day, preparing for the online classes na nakatutok na talagang walang lalabas, andyan kayo, will set a good standard for our students. Yung discipline saka undiverted knowledge that will enter their minds will be preserved. Yun po sana, Kapopoy, ay magawa po natin kahit po nga doon sa DepEd sa mga young ones Kasi makikita mo, mapapansin mo, yung iba, napapansin ko, Kapopoy, naka-ano po sila, naka-video out.
Yeah.
And we don't know what they're doing. Nasa bahay ka na nga, hindi ka pa nakikinig ng tama doon sa tinuturo ng teacher. So yun lamang po, Mr. Chairman, ang isa sa mga gusto ko lang po sana marinig kay Kapopoy kung ano po yung kanyang pananaw sa bagay na ito. Bago po ako pumunta sa sa last question ko po.
Malaki ho talaga ang pagbabago dahil sa shift sa flexible Kasi this has never happened in our history in the country of this magnitude. And many are learning as we go. Kasi wala naman hong expert talaga dito. Everyone is learning from each other. We're learning from other countries. I agree with you. The behavioral aspect of learning, particularly the classroom, will really change or has changed. In fact, the habits of students have changed. I noticed doon sa online class ng aking mga apo, hindi nagre-recite ang mga bata. Kasi nung tinanong ko, pag nasa classroom setting daw sila, pag recitation, they look at each other, they look at who raises their hand. The social interaction in the classroom has changed because of technology. So some students become very passive. They just watch or they tune out, etc. We will continue to document this and learn as we go. But I agree with you, this must be seriously studied. The effect of technology on flexible learning. Kasi hindi rin ho kasi pwede yung tuloy-tuloy na nakaharap ka sa screen. Merong health tsaka behavioral impact din. May mga pag-aaral ho na pag pinilit mo yung bata na talagang 2-3 oras siya, may epekto din sa kalusugan niya. So we have to adjust all of this, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I would like to interject with that, Mr. Chairman, Kapopoy. I think tama ka doon. And that's the reason why I want you to have a parameter that will be followed. Considering I was about to say kanina nga po, na you have to check as well the distance of the student and to dun sa kanilang gadget, kasi nga may epekto rin po yan. So having said that, Mr. Chairman, siguro tama po yung sinabi po ninyo, pag-aralan po ninyo, set a parameter that will be followed by all the students, and let the students feel, maramdaman po nila na meron silang responsibilidad sa pagpasok sa online classes. The same thing na pumapasok sila sa isang regular na paaralan. Mr. Chair, isa na lamang po to, kasi nabasa ko yung mga news nung kay
Chairman,
about to sa
DS, Dan, if I may interrupt you.
Yes.
We're out of time already. So,
yeah, last question na po, Mr. Chairman. Okay, so yung pong tinatawag po nating academic freeze, na nabasa po kayo doon. And thank you for that, for fighting it out, na talagang walang academic freeze na dapat pong mangyari. And I really salute you on that matter. At ngayon nga po, nasa preparation na po kayo ng tinatawag natin yung limited face-to-face. By January, you're trying to na po ata to i-implement. And considering yung sinasabi nila na kapag walang vaccine, anong gagawin po ninyo dito? Pero ang sa akin lamang po, Mr. Popoy de Vera, tuloy po natin to, paglaban po natin na magkaroon na po tayo ng simula. Considering po na as of yesterday, yung sinasabi po nila na 269,000 na positive. Di ba? Doon po nakarecover na 207,000 ang nakarecover. At out of the 200,007 na nakarecover, 57,000 lamang yung active. As sa 57,000 na active sa coronavirus, 47,000 asymptomatic. Almost 2,000 to 3,000 lamang po yung talagang severe. In that case, Mr. Chairman, talagang nakita din natin yung ratio na dati 1:2, yung transmission ng tinatawag natin reproduction number. Ngayon bumaba na po 1:1. Kaya, Mr. Popoy, de Vera, pagpatuloy niyo po itong pakikipaglaban dito sa face-to-face na masimulan na po dahil I support that, that program. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chairman, at muli, Kapopoy, siguro last statement coming from you with regards to this query.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're doing our best. We're learning as one, basically. I always tell everyone, wala namang eksperto sa COVID. And we just have to make sure that the best practices are replicated by the others and the worst practices are avoided. Yun lang po ang policy, kasi nabasa niyo na ho sa balita ngayon, merong isang university sa Isabela na nag-face-to-face kahit bawal. Inutusan ho naming tumigil at binigyan namin ng show cause order. Yun ho mga ganon, yun yung ma-avoid, pati ho yung ginawa ng UST. These are the things that should be avoided, but the best practices should be copied all over the country. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Our next interpellator would be from the minority, Representative Argel Kabatbat. Representative Argel Kabatbat. Yeah. He will be taking the time of Representative Castro. Last call for Representative Kabatbat. We will now proceed to Representative Sara Elago, who will be,
Sulat
Okay. So the next interpellator from the minority would be Representative Franz Castro. Representative Castro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Representative Castro is recognized.
I thank Representative Kabatbat for yielding his time to me. So my first question, Mr. Chair, is related dun po sa implementation ng pre-tertiary education. So, Mr. Chair, may mga reports po kaming mga natanggap na hindi nabayaran o na-download agad yung mga pondo para sa free higher education. Ilan po sa mga epekto nito, Mr. Chair, dahil delayed yung fund, napipilitan po yung mga SUC na mag-lay off dahil walang mapasahod kaya or hindi ma-utilize yung fund on time. So ilan po sa mga example nito, halimbawa po sa Region 3, napilitan pong mag-lay off yung schools dahil po sa 6 to 8 months po yung delay doon sa pagda-download po ng pondo. So apektado na po yung pagkuha ng mga supplies, yung mga equipments, yung pasahod po sa mga contractual na mga faculty, etc. So ano po ba yung pwedeng gawin para ma-improve po natin itong mabilisang pagda-download po ng pondo? Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Congresswoman Castro, there are several things that can be done. The first one, as I said earlier, is administratively, CHED must have more administrative capability, particularly personnel. Number two, we need to get the money from DBM faster and earlier so that we can disburse it. Number three, we need the state universities to ensure that they comply with many requirements. Yun hong mga SUC na nagre-reklamo na hindi sila nabigyan, ang totoo ho, ang marami doon, madaming non-compliance. The papers will not move if they don't comply with requirements. Dahil pag tinanggap po namin at nirelease namin yung pera, COA naman ang hahabol sa amin. So I ask Congresswoman Castro, for those that are complaining, please check if they are complying on time. I have the list. There are still SUCs until now that have not complied with requirements for reimbursement of tuition and miscellaneous fees for the second semester, which should have ended in the first part of this year. We cannot download the money if they are not compliant. Our Executive Director, Attorney Ryan, has been meeting with them regularly and helping them comply. So yun hong reklamo ng iba, that is only one side of the story, to be perfectly frank. The other side is, there is a lack of non-compliance. Pag natanggap po namin ang pera galing sa DBM at compliant ang university, 2 linggo lang ho dumadating yung pera. So kung hindi dumating, either non-compliant o wala kaming perang ibibigay. We can submit to you a copy of the SUCs that are until now non-compliant. and we can submit to you documents of how fast they complied. So those that are complaining, we can check on the record if they complied early. Congresswoman Castro.
Congresswoman Castro.
Okay, can I continue, Mr. Chair?
Proceed.
Okay. So siguro po masubmit na lang po sa atin yung report para makita rin po natin kasi pero yung 6 to 8 months delayed po, napakatagal na po talaga yon para kung may ginawa po ang CHED, so siguro yung constant follow-up, consultation sa mga SUCs natin, baka hindi po tumagal ng 6 to 8 months. So ganun kasi po ang report. But anyway, pa-submit na lang po yung mga eskwelahan, Mr. Chair. Another question, Mr. Chair, yung tungkol po doon sa scholarship, doon sa implementation po noong transition ng fiscal program. So, ano po yung update natin, Mr. Chair, doon sa scholarship nung ating mga faculty? Remember, nung nagkaroon po tayo ng K-12 transition, may mga faculty po na nag-opt for scholarship. So yung ilan po ay nahihirapan dahil po hindi po na-download yung mga tuition. Yung mga faculty, sila na po yung nagbabayad, sila na rin po yung yung mga credentials nila, kailangan nilang makuha, so sila po yung magbabayad ng tuition. So ano po yung comment dito ng ating CHED, Mr. Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Doon lang sa unang tanong, pakibigay ho sa amin yung pangalan ng mga eskwelahan who claim that it took us 9 months to process it, and we will submit to the House a rundown of compliance issues para malinaw kung saan ho ang pagkukulang. We are very transparent in our operations.
Chairman Popoy, can you provide the House, the committee, as well as the Office of Representative Castro with a copy of what she's requesting?
Yung Mr. Chair, we can give you a copy of the SUCs and LUCs that until today are not compliant. But if there are claims by other SUCs that it took us 9 months to process the papers, I'd like to know the name of that SUC so that we can submit a report on why they were not paid on time. We will do that. We have our documentation para the accountability is clear. Kung nagkulang naman po kami, di aaminin namin. Pero kung hindi ho nagko-comply yung SUC, wala ho kami magagawa. Hindi mabibigay yung pera.
Tama naman ho yun, Chairman Popoy, para marinig lahat ng panig.
Yeah, kasi ho, pinablish nga namin sa dyaryo lahat yung mga private schools na hindi nagko-comply para mapilita sila mag-comply. Out of more than 1,000 private universities that are supposed to get tests, about 600 are not doing billing documents. We publish in the newspaper the names of the schools. Nung medyo na-publish ho, lumiit from 600, naging less than 100.
Maybe we should do the same for SUCs and LUCs.
We will do this, Mr. Chair, mag-shame campaign para malinaw kung nasaan ang accountability. Kung galing naman ho sa commission, ay aaminin namin agad kung nagkukulang kami. Doon ho sa pangalawang tanong, inaamin ho namin, talagang nagka-problema tayo doon sa previous K-12 scholarships. Noon hong inappoint ako ni President Duterte na OIC noong January of 2018, ang unang ginawa ko ho'y tinigil ko yung scholarship kasi the design was really very bad. And when I took over in January of 2018, there were more than 3,000 scholars who have not received their stipends. So we said we cannot continue with the program where the scholars suffer. It is inhuman. They should not be subject to that kind of treatment. Aaminin ko hanggang ngayon, meron pang mga scholar na may problema. We ask our Congresswoman Castro to give us the names para matutukan ho namin kung ano pa yung problema. Ang nagiging problema ho ng marami ay may mga COA disallowances po at ayaw iparelease ng COA yung mga naibayad sa kanila. Ang isang example usually, ito ay pagkukulang sa sistema. Dapat full-time scholar sila kasi binabayaran hindi lang yung kanilang scholarship, binibigyan pa silang stipend. Nakalusot ho't pinagturo sa eskwelahan. So sabi ng COA hindi dapat makakuha ng stipend. Yan ho iniisa-isa namin case by case. Yung 3,000 ho na hindi nabayaran noong 2018, palagay ko ho wala na sa 50 ang may problema pa hanggang ngayon. But please give us the name. I will personally instruct that their cases be handled individually. And we can report to Congresswoman Castro the status of the problems of these scholars. Gusto din mo namin silang tulungan, so any information that will be made available to us, we will help them, Mr. Chair.
Rep. Castro. Congresswoman Castro.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much dun po sa sagot ni Kapokoy. Yung pangatlong tanong ko lang po, Mr. Chair, about ito po yung continuing questions ito taon-taon, no? Yung implementation po ng NBC 461. So, meron pa rin po yatang hindi nababayaran or nakaka-receive ng benefits due to this NBC 461. So, ano po yung masasabi dito ng ating CHED, Mr. Chair? Meron pa pong mga na-implement. Pangalawang tanong po, Mr. Chair, dahil sana po ngayon po ay nasa 8th cycle na po tayo. So, meron po ba sa budget yung para sa 8th cycle naman po? Kasi overdue na po ito, Mr. Chair.
Sa NBC 461 ho, lahat ng promotion ay tapos na sa lahat ng state universities. Ang naiiwan pa hong problema ay may mga appeal, yung mga ibang faculty members, na palagay nila hindi tama yung pagkakapromote nila. And we leave that to the respective boards of the state universities to resolve. Pero tapos na ho ang promotion decisions in all state universities. So, wala hong hindi nababayaran in that case kung meron mang problema. Yung 8th cycle ho, nakalagay kasi sa special provision ng 2019 GAA that subsequent promotions, the guidelines will be crafted by the DBM and CHED. We have constituted a technical working group to craft the new guidelines, which will correct problems with the previous guidelines. And we are targeting that within the year we will be able to approve the guidelines. Meron na ang draft pero kailangan hong magkonsulta kasi sa mga universities. So medyo nahirapan tayo mag-consultation kasi naka-Zoom. But the new guidelines, the DTWG has been seriously looking into new guidelines. Many of these will correct the defects of the previous promotion system, Mr. Chair. Kaya wala hong naka-allocate for 2021 for promotion kasi pag nag-promotion cycle ho tayo next year, hindi ho kaagad matatapos yan within a couple of months. So realistically, it is difficult to allocate in the NEP promotion for 2021 if the promotion criteria and the targeted amount has not been identified as of now.
Thank you, Chairman. Rep. Castro, I would like to advise Rep. Castro, she would be using the time of Representative Kabatbat already. Thank you.
Just to wind up, Mr. Chair, regarding the implementation of NBC 461. So, pwede po bang magpadala po ng report ang CHED about dun sa fully implemented na, tsaka yung report na hindi pa po na-implemented. Kasi dito po sa Region 6, particularly on Negros Oriental, so tama po kayo, no? Yung NBank ng BOR, nung school o nung SUC, siya yung magde-decide. Pero hanggang ngayon po ay hindi pa na-decide. Merong affected na mga 3 faculty. Pangalawa po, yung 8 cycle na sinasabi ko, parang medyo matagal na po nating pinag-uusapan ito, no? Kailan po, Mr. Last question na, kailan po yung time frame para matapos na po itong guidelines ng cycle 8? Kasi ito po ay ano na long overdue na po. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we are targeting it before the end of the year, matapos yung guidelines.
Does that answer satisfy the Representative Castro?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you po at meron pa po akong time later on para sa iba ko pong issues. Thank you.
We will now proceed to the next interpellator, Representative Mark Go from the majority. Representative Mark Go.
Yeah, I'm here, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Chairman Popoy de Vera of CHED and the other members of Congress who are present at the plenary hall and those on Zoom. Also, good morning to all the members of the Commission on Higher and Technical Education. I have seen the presentation of Chairman Popoy, and it is indicated in this presentation that the budget of 2020 of CHED is about 47,906,000,000, and because of the National Budget Circular 580, about 32 or 13 billion was cut from this budget. I would like to find out from Chairman Popoy what were the programs that were affected as a result of this NBC 580, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, it is on slide 28. The total discontinued budget due to NBC 580 is about 15 billion pesos. Most of these are realignments done by the House and the Senate. Most of these are for later release, which will not be released anymore. And the UACTE budget is budget for reimbursement of tuition and miscellaneous fees for the second semester of academic year 2021, plus the realignment of Congress or the augmentation done by Congress in the budget for free higher ed, which will no longer be released. So the total is 15.3. There is a breakdown in the slide. Some of this, there's a monitoring and evaluation of performance of higher education programs, financial assistance to postgraduate students, funding requirements for sustainable development goals. What we did, Mr. Chair, is we worked with DBM. So most of these discontinued amounts, we were able to put some of them in the 2021 NEP. So kung hindi man namin nagawa ito sa 2020, at least magagawa namin sa 2021. Yun ho ang ninegotiate o ninegotiate namin sa DBM na yung iba dito can be incorporated in the 2021 NEP.
Mr. Chair, if that is the case, we will be assured that some of the programs that you intend to pursue this 2020 can now be pursued in 2021 if and when the amount that was removed as a result of the NBC 580 will be incorporated in this 2021 budget. Is that the main reason, Mr. Chair, that the budget of CHED was increased from 47 billion to 50 billion this 2021, Mr. Chair?
Actually, if you look at the comparative budget of 2020 and 2021, the increase is from 32 to 50. Kasi yung 47, that is what is appropriated. But you have to minus the 15 billion that was discontinued. So actually, the total real appropriation for CHED for 2020 is only 32.8 billion, and this increases to 50.9 billion in the 2021 NEP. The biggest increases would be increases in UACTE because we expect more beneficiaries, and tawag dito, putting back some of the discontinued items as regular programs now of the Commission, rather than as realignment or augmentation of the House and the Senate, Mr. Chair. Pero pag tinignan niyo ho yung NEP namin for 2021, yung capital outlay ho namin ay talagang lumiit. It has been reduced to almost zero for the budgeted amounts in 2020, like the acquisition of a lot for our Region 4A office. 20 million was allocated. These are all for later release. The capital outlay for our regional offices, nawala ho lahat yan. So we still need the help of our education champions in the House if some of these augmentations can be done in the NEP for 2021. So ang lumaki lang ho talaga sa 2021 ay yung funding for free higher ed.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman Popoy. Mr. Chair, I would like to ask Chairman Popoy, how many students do we have right now in the 112 SUC and 103 LUCs, Mr. Chair?
I'm looking for the slide, Mr. Chair. Nandito sa... Okay, the total enrollment for higher education is 3.4 million. And that includes enrollment for both public and private. But the beneficiaries of pre-higher ed for 2019-2020, those that are enjoying no tuition, no miscellaneous fees, is 1.33 million in 112 SUCs, and I don't know how many looks do we have now? 112 SUCs and more than 100. 112 SUCs and 103 looks. So the beneficiaries are 1.33 million students that are no longer paying tuition and miscellaneous fees.
The reason why I asked that is because I would like to find out how much is the cost per student under this universal access to tertiary education. How much is the cost, or how much do we help these students studying in the SUCs and the LUCs, Mr. Chair?
We will have to compute that, Mr. Chair, because the different programs under RA 10931 are different types of subsidies. Part of the subsidy is no more tuition and miscellaneous, but another subsidy is to give tertiary education subsidy of 60,000 to those in private and 40,000 to those in public. And there is a student loan program of 1 billion, and there is tulong dunong where the subsidy is effectively only 15,000 per student. So it is difficult to get the total and divide it, but we can compute and submit to the Congress what is the effective subsidy if they have free tuition and miscellaneous, effective subsidy if they get tests. The effective subsidy if they are tulong-dunong scholars is 15,000, but if they are enrolled in SUCs and LUCs, they also get the subsidy of pre-higher education, tuition and miscellaneous. So mahirap po yung isang data, but we can go through the numbers and submit, Mr. Chair.
I think
You know, the reason, Mr. Chair, the reason why I asked that, particularly on the free tuition and miscellaneous, if we know exactly how much is the cost per student and we have a population per university, we would know exactly how much is the budget that we should allocate per university or per local university. And therefore, we can come out with a measure that will probably remove the function of giving the money to CHED, and CHED will deliver this to the SUCs and the LOCs instead of just directly incorporating this amount to the respective budget as provided for in the GAA, Mr. Chair. Are you amenable with that, Chairman Popoy?
Yeah,
Excuse me. I have to remind Rep. Go that his time is up. Please answer, Chairman Popoy.
Yeah, we can study that. But there is another factor, Mr. Chair, that we have to put in. Because the tuition in miscellaneous being charged per SOCs is very uneven across geographic areas. And that's why we are contracting an outside group to do a cost norm study to find out what is the needed subsidy per student. Kasi meron mong mga SOCs tulad nung SOC sa Guimara, ano ba yung isa? Sa Mindanao, ang charge ho na effective tuition is 500 pesos. Luging-lugi ho yung university kasi uneven yung rates nila. So we have to even this out to find out what is the correct subsidy that government should be giving to the universities, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, just one reaction to that. You know, every SOC should present their budget to Congress. And they know exactly how much is the total tuition and miscellaneous that should be charged to the students. And because of this free tertiary education, we can compute this, and each university will prepare its own budget and directly request Congress for approval of the budget of every SUC, just like what we are doing right now. We have scheduled, I hope we will have the schedule of the budget deliberation of the different SUCs. It's true that in some areas, but if we look at the total cost of the government per student, it definitely it's not 500 pesos. It's simply the total budget of the school over its population. That's the per capita cost per student. So if we know that, then there is no need to come out with all this reimbursement thing, and that will definitely avoid a lot of work to the Commission on Higher and Higher Education, Mr. Chair. That's all what I have. I just want to get the reaction of Chairman Popoy on this.
Thank you very much, Congressman Mark Go. That will be your last question. You have already consumed more than your 3 minutes. The reply from CHED, Commissioner Popoy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We are contracting the UP Population Institute to do the cost norm study this year. The cost norm study will compute the effective cost of education in the different regions of the country, and we can benchmark and determine which universities actually should be charging more tuition, which universities are getting the correct reimbursement. I think, Mr. Chair, this is the correct starting point to find out what is the cost of education across the different regions of the country.
Thank you, Chair Popoy de Vera, for that reply. Next, the Chair would like to recognize from the minority, Representative Sara Elago.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Magandang umaga sa CHED. First, Mr. Chair, can we get an update on the number of HEIs which will use for online, blended, or offline with limited face-to-face modalities?
We can submit that the data is impossible to put in now because there are almost 2,000 public and private universities in the country, Mr. Chair. But we can try and get the data and submit it during the budget deliberations. There are simply too many universities to put together in a simplified report, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, maaari na lang natin malaman naman ang sa SUCS. Kamusta po ang ating SUCS, main campuses and the satellite campuses included?
Ang lumabas dun sa monitoring ng CHED, lumabas ang katotohanan na sa madaming SUCS, malakas ang signal sa main, mahina sa extension or sa external campuses. And this is one of the major constraints when they decide the flexible model that they will use. I think over time, the SUCS have been investing mainly on their main campus, and some of their external campuses have little, if not no connectivity. In our survey, there are about out of close to 400 total campuses, a little over 40 external campuses reported that they have no connectivity at all. So that creates problems in terms of designing your flexible learning systems kasi in the external campuses, you have to go offline. So that is what the data available has shown us, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, since we have connectivity issues in our satellite campuses, how then will enrollment in these SUCs be affected? May report na po ba ang CHED tungkol dito? At ano po ang available na suporta sa mga scholar ng bayan?
Yung enrollment data, wala pa po kasi hindi pa nagbukas lahat yung universities. Some are opening as late as October. So we are slowly getting the data. It's with our regional offices. Generally, the enrollment went up. Tumaas because patapos na yung transition period ng K-12, the entering freshmen from K-12 now represent the graduates of K-12. So it has increased in all, in practically all state universities and colleges.
Mr. Chair, meron tayong 4 billion na suporta para sa education sector transition to new normal, 600 million at 300 million para sa qualified students and displaced teachers, both for basic and tertiary education, and 3 billion for SUC's development of smart campuses. Can we get an update from CHED on the utilization of these funds provided under Bayanihan 2?
As far as the 3 billion smart campuses allocation is concerned, Mr. Chair, we have constituted a technical working group and an advisory group to the Commission composed of IT experts, experts on smart campuses and cities. We have been doing briefing sessions with them so that we can design the appropriate intervention for smart campuses. I'd like to inform Congress that realistically, the 3 billion can only lay the foundations for a smart campus. It cannot produce a smart campus, only the foundations. That is what we can commit to Congress when we implement the 3 billion program. The bad news, Mr. Chair, is there is no allocation for smart campuses in the 2021 NEP. So what we can commit to Congress is to just lay the foundations. Beyond that, we do not know what will happen. That is a problem, Mr. Chair. On the other allocations, hindi pa po namin nakikita kung paano i-implement yung para sa mga affected faculty. Kasi ang decision mo sa Bayanihan 2, pinagsama-sama yung affected faculty ng K-12, higher ed, public and private, and the allocation was very small. We have to sit down with DepEd to find out how we can design this. Kasi if I remember initially, the proposal was to do that for higher ed. But I suppose Congress wanted to be inclusive, so they included high school, elementary, public, and private. That money, Mr. Chair, will not go very far in terms of the number of affected faculty members. So we have not decided how it will be implemented. We have to sit down with DepEd, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, we covered the expedient processing of this available support under Bayanihan 2. Dahil po, napakalaki ng maitutulong yan sa mga scholar ng bayan, mga teachers at personnel na talagang humaharap sa napakatinding kalagayan sa gitna ng pandemya. At lalo na ngayon, Mr. Chair, na maski po ang mga SUCs, kulang na nga ang pondo, marami pa dito ay mababawasan ng pondo para sa 2021. Sa pagtatala po ng kabataan, 19 na SUCs ang makakaranas ng budget cut sa kanilang total budget, 18 naman na SUCs sa kanilang maintenance and other operating expenses, 52 ang mababawasan ang capital outlay. Dalawa dito, Ginoong Chair, ay may 0 na pondo para sa capital outlay, habang may SUC po tayo na 2 taon na walang natatanggap na pondo para sa capital outlay. Kaya imbis na kaltasan ng pondo ang mga SUCs na to, nag-propose naman sila ng kailangan nila na pondo, dapat po nating ibigay ang pondo para sa mga SUCs na to na kinakailangan nila para sa transition sa new normal at pagpapalakas ng inclusive learning modalities sa ating state universities and colleges. And now, Mr. Chair, napakalaki po ng kaltas sa mga scholarships, financial assistance program. Magkano po ang proposed budget ng CHED for 2021?
Hanapin ko po yung slide dun sa scholarships, dun sa 2021. Net. Well, Mr. Chair, we thank the concern of Congresswoman Ilago for the SUCs. Talaga hong hirap ang higher education sector because of the constraints of the budget. Ang masasabi ko lang ho dun sa assistance dun sa affected faculty in private universities. Medyo problematic ho kasi yung mas maganda sana kung private lang, sa DOLE na yung data. Pag pinagsama mo ho kasi yung public and private, iba-iba yung data source. But we will try our best to put it together. Yung sa net, in the 2021 net, Mr. Chair, I'm just looking at this slide. Okay, one back. Yeah, the level of funding for financial assistance for faculty members actually is the same as the previous year. Medyo mataas ho yung financial assistance to postgraduate students. Yan po ay makakatulong talaga sa faculty. Ang binago ho namin from previous year, nakalagay ho kasi sa previous year, nakasama siya sa K-12 program. And that is a limiting factor because the faculty members must show that they were affected by K-12. Like na displays, walang load, malaki yung limiting factor yon. So we negotiated with the DBM that it is now a generic title called Financial Assistance to Postgraduate Students so that it can cover the faculty members. So yan po that is the major development. So we are launching a more aggressive scholarship program for faculty members starting this school year, Madam Congresswoman. Yung subsidy for medical students, we are supporting medical students in 167 million in 8 SUCs. Wala hong funding yan. Historically, we always ask Congress to augment it. So that one, we still need the help of Congress on the financial assistance to for the medical students, the level of student financial assistance has also basically been reduced because the realignment of Congress in the last budget was labeled for later release. So, umunti ho yung pwedeng student financial assistance na pwede naming ibigay compared to the previous year because there was a reduction in the 2020 budget. As you know, as has been seen in the slide, the effective budget of CHED for 2020 was reduced from 47 to 32. Ang tinamaan ho yung mga for later release, ang iba doon ho ay student financial assistance.
Mr. Chair, 60% ang budget cut sa student scholarship, habang zero budget cut naman zero budget ang para sa cash grant for medical students. Tama po ba?
Every year ho, talagang walang allocation yung medical students. And every year, Congress realigns, because this is an initiative of Congress, by the way, in 2017, when Congress realigned this. We are happy for the passage of the Doktor ng Bayan law, because then these medical scholarships can be captured in that law, and appropriation can be put there. So I think that is the long-term solution, Mr. Chair. So para hindi na every year nagre-realign ng Kongreso.
Mr. Chair, this is unacceptable, especially in the time of a pandemic. That's why we call for Congress to restore these budget cuts.
Yeah, Rep. Elago, you are now using the time allotted for Rep. Rosas. Representative Rosas time. Okay.
So,
Mr. Chair, let me just correct. Yung palang subsidy for medical students na negotiate namin sa DBM na kahit na realignment siya, i-release pa sa amin. So there is budget for medical students even for next year. Tama ba, Atty. Seth? Yung medical students, we got a letter from DBM that for the 2020 GAA, the subsidy for medical students will be retained, and for the 2021 net, meron ding konti na-reduce kasi nakalagay for one sem lang ito because this is for the second sem of 2021. But for the next school year, 2021-2022, there is no allocation.
May bilang na po ba ng mga scholars na apektado ng mga cuts na ito?
Doon mo sa medical students meron, nandito sa isang slide namin. Can we look for the slide? For the medical cash grants, oops, can't find it. Asan yan? Ito, there are 1,789 medical students that are currently being funded out of the cash grant for medical students. So we hope Congress can sustain this. Until the new law is effectively implemented, we still need funding for them, and hopefully we can graduate them to the new law as medical scholars.
Muli, Mr. Chair, hindi natin pwede pabayaan ang mga scholars, lalo na po sa gitna ng pandemya. Can we get the commitment of CHED that they will exhaust all means and study options and give the recommendations to the House Committee on Appropriations and both chambers of Congress to provide economic assistance for our scholars and prioritize the health and well-being of the education stakeholders in this unprecedented economic crisis brought by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes, we will submit, Mr. Chair, just like we do every budget year. We tell Congress the impact of the net on the scholarships, and we ask Congress to realign. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Now, Mr. Chair, let me go to the matter of tuition and other school fees. May naging pagbabago po ba o adjustment sa determination ng cost of tuition and other school fees, lalo na ngayon sa gitna ng pandemya? Ano po ang patakaran ng CHED dito?
Doon ho sa mga nag-a-apply ng bagong increase sa tuition, the parameters of their application and the evaluation was changed. We want to make sure that whatever they are asking for is flexible learning related. Some of the universities that applied for tuition increase, nilagay nila sa application nila na i-apply nila hindi itong school year na ito kundi sa susunod na taon. May mga gumawa ko noon na mga eskwelahan, pero lumiit ho yung number of schools from a high of almost 400 applicants in the first quarter of 2020. I think it is down to about 89 that have applied. It is the regional office of CHED that handles the applications. So I don't have all the details, but we can submit to Congress the ones that were approved and what are the main characteristics of their application. Pero maliit po talaga yung percent ng nag-apply for this year at yung iba sabi nila, pag in-approve nyo, we will apply it not this year but next school year.
Mr. Chair, ang isa po sa pinakamabigat na pinapasan ngayon ng mga private schools ay yung student connectivity subsidy o kung paano ba titiyakin na may connectivity ang mga estudyante sa provision ng mga course tax para sa mga enrollees. May ginagawa po ba ang CHED sa pag-ugnayan sa DICT para pababain naman yung presyo ng mobile data at internet fees?
Hindi po yung pababain ng mobile data. Ang project namin with DICT is to assess the actual connectivity in the different campuses so that we can design the most appropriate intervention. So we have conducted a survey and we now know the actual bandwidth in the different campuses. We will use this data also for the 3 billion allocation for smart campuses. Mahirap po kasi mag-design ng gagawin kung yung data hindi very clear. So doon lumabas yung masama at magandang balita na may mga campuses na talagang walang connectivity. So ang pagtutulungan namin ng DICT ay paano malagyan ng connectivity itong mga ito. The other thing that many SUCs have done is they have realigned their 2020 budget to improve connectivity. That is pursuant to the instruction of the DBM that the things that you will do in 2020, which you might not be able to do anymore, you should realign it for connectivity. So many of the SUCs have brought tablets and laptops for their students, for their faculty, increase their bandwidth by buying more bandwidth. Some of them have projects to put fiber optics to connect the campuses. But the constraint there is the available resources to be realigned in each of the SUCs. So the SUCs that have a lot of money are able to do more. The SUCs that have less money are able to do less. But there are universities which are loaning their students tablets just like you loan a book for the school year. And they use their unused fiduciary fund and their other income to fund that.
What about private schools, Mr. Chair?
Wala ho kasi tayong subsidy sa private schools, so we cannot dictate what they do. So those have more resources are investing more. Those have less resources are unable to invest. Ang tinutulong natin sa private universities, for example, the smaller private universities, we help them by giving free training program to their faculty on flexible learning so that they don't have to spend for it. We have funded universities to train them or work with universities that are giving free training so we can offset some of the cost of flexible learning. But in terms of direct subsidies from the Commission, we are unable to give direct subsidies because we don't have a program of that kind currently, Mr. Chair.
Ang isa po sa pwede natin pag-usapan din dito sa Kongreso ay kung paano matutulungan ang mga private schools, lalo na yung nagpasa na ng intent no, to temporarily stop the operations for the current academic year is the provision of the student connectivity subsidy. Sang-ayon po sa COCOPEA, ito ay nasa 400 pesos kada estudyante. Ang kalagayan po kasi ngayon, 54% ng student enrollment sa higher education ay nasa private schools. At meron pa tayong mga lugar, mga komunidad na walang state universities and colleges o wala namang looks. No? Kaya mahalaga na ngayon sa gitna ng pandemya, maglalaan tayo ng pondo bilang pangsuporta sa mga estudyante ng private universities and colleges. Now, Mr. Chair, let me just put on the record the call of this youth representation for the honorable members of both chambers of Congress to first restore huge cuts on the budget of our nation's 111 state universities and colleges, immediately release to prevent delays on the budget for free tuition and other school fees and tertiary education subsidy as mandated in RA 10931, extend the eligibility of scholars for academic year 2021-2022 and adjust application requirements of student financial assistance programs. Fourth is to provide communication and connectivity allowances for faculty and students. Fifth is to prioritize funding for appropriate digital platforms and library subscriptions. Sixth is for expedient rollout of free public Wi-Fi and other information and communications technology support programs. And lastly, invest in the preparation for the safe reopening of campuses. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Chair.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Sara Elago. Next to profound questions is from the majority, Congresswoman Precious Hiporito Castelo. Precious, are you on Zoom? Calling on Congresswoman Castelo through Zoom. She's not there. We'll just go back to her. Congressman Paul Daza. Congressman Paul Daza.
Good morning, Chairman Arroyo. Good morning.
Congressman Daza, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, good morning, Chairman.
Please proceed. You have 3 minutes. If Congressman Daza is having problems with his internet, we'd like to first ask Congressman Edgar Sarmiento to propound his questions. Chairman Sarmiento of the Committee on Transportation.
Chairman, I'm back.
Oh, you're here. Okay. We go back to Congressman Paul Daza.
Yeah,
please,
because
please stop the questioning, please. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, the ComSec wasn't unmuting me. Chairman, my first comment is for the committee. I'm hoping that the Vice Chair, Campos and Matugas are here, and because my first manifestation, just like Congresswoman Ilago, is I'd like to get an assurance from the committee and from the Vice Chair that the funding for the medical student scholarship, we need to make sure it's retained for this year, no less than the DOH in the IATF projected that this year we will have a shortage of 4,000 doctors. So it's very critical that we maintain the funding, the subsidy for medical students in the SUCs.
Yes, you know very well that the committee can only go insofar as defending the budget. We can give assurances because the budget is voted upon by the whole 306 strong members of the lower house. That assurance cannot be given, it can only be fought for.
Yeah, Chairman, the assurance I want is from the Vice Chair in charge to make sure we defend that line item and make sure it doesn't disappear in the BICAM. Second, Chairman, I'd like to ask...
The vice chairman of the said subcommittee may not even be part of the BICAM. So again, we can only go so far as defending it in the plenary. But as I said, this budget is voted upon by the 366 strong members of the lower house. No single individual can argue into himself the power to commit such a amount in the budget. Anyway, please continue.
Yes, Chairman, but as Vice Chair, we defend, and that's my request. Second is, in the previous years to CHED, and I'd like to say hi to Chairman De Vera and Commissioner Dorilag and the other commissioners and the other officials. We had problems with the TES because part of the beneficiaries we pick up from the listahanan of DSWD. My question is, has that issue been resolved? Because like in many areas, there are many poor students. In fact, I've experienced personally a child from a Pantawid family supposed to be getting TES because they weren't in the listahanan, they weren't able to get the scholarship. So has this been resolved, Mr. Chairman?
Please answer, Commissioner De Vera. You don't have to wait for me to recognize you. Just answer directly so we save time.
The listahanan has not been, there is no new listahanan. It's still listahanan 2.0, Mr. Chair. So we're hoping that the DSWD will issue the updated listahanan and hope that the beneficiaries there are those that include those that have been missed out. But Mr. Chair, as I said, that the listahanan is a DSWD list. We have no jurisdiction over it. Maybe it would be good if Congress can inquire when the budget of the SWD is discussed and give a timeline for an updated listahanan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And last, Mr. Chair, is a request to CHED. As we all know, Republic Act 10929 passed in 2017 mandated free internet access in public places, which includes the SUCs. And for the information of CHED, DICT has received funding in previous years. So my request with CHED is for the chairman and for the other officials to continue dialogue with DICT and to press them in the free Wi-Fi access, especially in our SUCs, and in fact, I would include the DepEd school. So I just want an assurance from the chairman to continue pressing with DICT the needs of the SUCs. That's all, Mr. Chair. And can I just get a reaction and assurance from CHED?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we are already sitting down. We have sat down with the ICT. In fact, we have already measured the bandwidth in all the campuses of the SUCs so that we can get a sense of which will be prioritized. So the ICT and CHED are working on it as fast as we can, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, can we ask CHED to provide a report on their communication with DICT? Could we request ComSec to get that from CHED, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we will submit to the committee. We have been meeting by Zoom with the ICT officials since the pandemic started, Mr. Chair.
That's all, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chairman Daza. Next to ask questions is the Honorable Franz Castro. Franz Castro. Through Zoom, the Honorable Franz Castro is next to interpolate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to NBC 461, Mr. Chair, regarding the 8th cycle, dahil ito po, Mr. Chair, ay 2016 to 2019 pa po dapat na maipatupad, no, yung coverage nito. So, tanong po, Mr. Chair, may budget na po ba dito sa 2021? Ang CHED?
Wala po.
Okay. So, as regards the criteria, Mr. Chair, so sinabi po kanina ni Chairman, Chairman Popoy, that it would be finished within the year, yung criteria. So, this is 2016 to 2019. Pwede po ba mag-request, Mr. Chair, sa CHED, na ang gamitin muna dito ay yung sa cycle 7A?
Hindi po, kasi kaya nga po nilagyan ng conditional veto yung 7th cycle. Kasi madami hong problema doon sa previous criteria. Kung gusto nyo po, sasabihin ko isa-isa, pero masama po yung dating criteria. We cannot adopt it, Mr. Chair, because there are elements in the criteria which no serious academician or university should adopt, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Chair, siguro para ma-compare, bigyan na lang po tayo ng copy ng CHED, tsaka yung bagong criteria. At sana po, Mr. Chair, baka pwedeng i-consult yung ating mga faculty regent, yung ating mga SUC, kaugnay nitong bagong criteria ng Cycle 8, Mr. Chair, at magbigay po ng report about the consultation.
Pag nagsimula na po yung consultation, yun hong ibang criteria na dinidevelop ngayon, ang nagbigay ho ng inputs niyan, mga faculty regent na. Kasi pati sila ay nagkakaproblema doon sa previous criteria. So some of the things we're working on were actually inputs from the faculty sector, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so mabigyan na lang po tayo ng report, Mr. Chair, sa consultation. Related po doon sa benefits, Mr. Chair, ito po naman yung tungkol sa mga non-academic personnel natin, Mr. Chair, yung implementation ng revised organizational structure and staffing standard o yung ROS. Meron po bang budget ito sa 2021? Kasi Mr. Chair, 2013 pa dapat ito na ipatupad. And as of now, 7 years, wala pa pong budget para doon sa ating non-academic personnel naman po, Mr. Chair.
Wala hong budget. We had endorsed the ROS since 2019. Madam Congresswoman, we support it. There are certain things we want, but in principle we support it. But there has been no allocation for the ROS in the 2021 NEP.
Mr. Chair, magkano po itong pinropose ng CHED? At baka pwede nating matulungan para ma-implement itong ROS at mabigay yung kinakailangan na benefits para doon sa mga non-academic personnel po.
I have to check, Mr. Chair, kung ano yung sinabmit ng 2019. Pero medyo masyadong malaki yata kaya hindi nalagyan ng pondo. Yeah, it's more than 10 billion in total. When they submitted it to the commission and asked for our support, we said, what is really the priority? Is it the promotion of faculty or the promotion of employees, because we might not have enough funds for both? So at least the promotion of faculty, we were able to push it. Yung promotion ng employees, wala hong pondong nilalaan dyan sa ngayon. But I think it's very big kasi mga 11 billion ang estimate in 2019.
Mr. Chair, nakakalungkot po, pareho naman pong importante ang academic and non-academic personnel doon sa pagsusulong natin ng kalidad na edukasyon para sa ating mga mag-aaral. So baka pwedeng gawin natin kung malaki po yung 11 billion, katulad na ginawa natin po dito sa NBC 461, Mr. Chair, di ba hinati natin, chinap-chap natin ito, baka pwedeng makapagbigay ang ating CHED, ang CHED po ng suggestion kung paano ito mai-implement. Kasi hindi naman po pwedeng hindi ito ma-implement. At least man lang saan ba magkikita tayo with CHED and DBM para mapondohan po ito. At least unti-unti mabayaran po yung mga non-teaching personnel. Baka yung iba po dyan, Mr. Chair, 2013 hanggang ngayon. Baka yung iba dyan ay retired na, namatay na, nagkasakit, or whatever, Mr. Chair. Ano po masasabi dito ng CHED?
Mr. Chair, we would defer to the DBM because they're the ones evaluating the ROS. We will defer to their evaluation, number one. And number two, we will defer to Congress if Congress will realign funds for that purpose because it's not in the net. So
Okay.
that's the position of the Commission, Mr. Chair.
So, Mr. Chair, I would like to ask the CHED to submit to us the required budget that they have submitted to last 2019, Mr. Chair, through the committee.
Hindi ho CHED ang nag-submit ng budget noong 2019. In-endorse ho namin yung ROS na sinumite ng pasok sa Kongreso. So sila ho yung may budget, hindi ho kami ang nag-compute ng budget. We endorsed their proposal to promote administrative staff, and as I know, that is still being evaluated by DBM. So wala ho kami masasubmit na amount kasi hindi ho kami ang nag-compute.
So, paano po makakakuha ang Committee on Appropriations?
Please wind up, Honorable Castro. Please wind up. You have 30 more seconds.
So, paano po makakuha ang Committee on Appropriations? So, if it is endorsed, recommended by CHED, they may kopya po sila. Tama po ba?
We can resubmit the 2019 that we received. I don't know if that data is still correct, but we can submit the last endorsement that we have, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Sige po, Mr. Hintayin po natin yan. On to my next question, Mr. Chair. Ito yung regarding na lang po, Mr. Chair, doon sa COVID-related, no? So, ano po yung mga measures ng CHED para maka-cope up sa pandemic, yung ating mga faculty? Especially po, may work from home na po, di ba? At ginagamit yung kuryente nila, sarili nila. At ito nga ni-raise ni Kong Sara yung tungkol sa internet allowance ng ating mga teachers. Meron ba pong issue about yung mga ayuda para sa mga gumagawa ng modules or yung course packs? Saka yung about the intellectual property concerns. So ano po yung masasabi ng CHED dito? So pwede po bang mag-endorse halimbawa ang CHED or mag-request sa CHED na siyempre po yung mga SUC ay mabigyan din ng allowance or support yung ating mga teachers doon sa work from home, Mr. Chair?
Ang ginawa po ng komisyon noong kasagsagan ng pandemya is to issue 6 advisories that told HEIs they should do flexible learning. They should adjust their learning delivery systems based on their capability, conditions on the ground, status of students, and status of the faculty. And these recommendations were adopted by the IATF on May 13. That's why what we have in higher education is a rolling enrollment. The schools that can do full online opened as early as June. Those that will do a combination of offline and online started opening in August. Some of them will open until October. Binibigyan ho natin ng flexibility para maka-adjust sa sitwasyon yung mga HEIs. Ikalawa, meron ho tayong project na naglagay ng online portal para yung mga laman ng gagamitin sa pagtuturo ay pwedeng ma-access ng estudyante at faculty. It is called Philippines CHED Connect. It is available online. Globe has already provided free internet connection to this. Ikatlo, we have been training teachers seriously. We have trained about 189,000 faculty members on flexible learning. And we will continue to train them in this coming semester and until the next school year to focus now on content, not just how to teach flexible-wise, but how to improve the content of what you have. We have worked with the local governments to establish quarantine facilities. There are 28 SUCs with quarantine facilities, and these have serviced about 17,000 Filipinos already. We have provided 93 million pesos to 59 SUCs so that they can continue making face masks, face shields to distribute now to their employees and their faculty. And we are working with the private universities to prepare if we can have limited face-to-face in low-risk MDCQ areas starting January. Yun hong assistance, direct assistance na binibigay nila sa mga faculty at estudyante, yan po ay ginagawa na nila from their internal budget. So they have unused fiduciary funds. They have been authorized to realign their budget. The proper way of doing it is to use it there. Ngayon, kung kulang pa ho, saka ho pwedeng pumasok ang CHED. Plano ho namin, using our funds, we will help buy good source materials that can augment their teaching. We can help the SUCs with connectivity, etc. Pero yung assistance ho nila sa mga estudyante at mga guro nila, we would rather that the universities do that because it's going to be very difficult for CHED to do that on a nationwide basis, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, yung intellectual property po, how do we protect the rights sa intellectual property doon sa mga modules na ginagawa ng faculty?
Doon mo sa mga excuse me. Commissioner, before you answer that, let me remind the Honorable Castro that she has exceeded already her 3 minutes. We are cutting off at 1 p.m., exactly 1 p.m., to give way to our sessions. So we will follow the 3-minute rule strictly. And may I ask the CHED family to also give just short but sweet answers. Huwag na po tayo magpalabok, and I would also like to appeal to the congressmen to follow the 3-minute rule so everyone can talk. We still have about 20 interpellators, and we only have until 1 o'clock. That means we only have 1 hour and 20 minutes. So, Franz, please, this is your last question. Please wind up.
So yun na lang po, Mr. Chair, how do we protect the intellectual property of the faculty at yun pong scholarship natin doon sa mga faculty, doon sa K-12 transition period. So, pwede po bang maituloy yun dito sa budget natin ng 2021 kasi marami po tayong mga teachers. Ito po, yung provision sa faculty scholarship bumaba po, Mr. Chair, ng 81%. So, paano po ito? Comment na lang po sa chat.
Yung sa intellectual property ho, yung mga pinondohan ng CHED na mga universities, nilagay namin doon, yung mapuproduce nilang learning materials, kailangan i-donate nila. Kasi pondo ng gobyerno ang ginamit. So we will put that in CHED Bayanihan Connect. Yun hong doon sa scholarship for faculty, actually mataas ho yung level namin ngayon. Doon ho sa 2021 NEP. Ang ginawa ho namin, we asked DBM to shift the funding from K-12 related to postgraduate related. So tumaas ko yung financial assistance to postgraduate students by 1.5 billion in 2021. So we shifted the allocation to a different pot para wala na hong limitation kasi dati ang pwede lang mag-apply yung apektado ng K-12. Wala na hong epekto yung K-12 sa madaming university. So now, it's open to everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Next to ask, thank you very much, Franz Castro. Thank you very much. Next to ask is the Honorable Edgar Sarmiento. Edgar Sarmiento. Is he online? And here is not online. The Honorable Rufus Rodriguez. The Honorable Rufus Rodriguez. Rufus Rodriguez through Zoom. The Honorable Rodriguez. The Honorable Maria Lourdes Congresswoman Arroyo. Lourdes Arroyo. Honorable Bernadette Herrera. Honorable Herrera. Honorable Dimapuro. Honorable Dimapuro. Honorable Dimapuro.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes. Tito Bobby,
Yes, thank you.
please proceed. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, Chairman, I'd like to ask Mr. Chairman if CHED is very interested in equality of education, and if they are, can you define what to them is quality of education?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Medyo mas mahabang oras yata ang kailangan namin to define that. The quality of education,
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if it will take long and I don't have that time, then it's good that they are. It's good for me to know that they are interested in the quality of education. But I'd like them to send me their definition of the quality of education before the plenary, Mr. Chairman.
yeah,
And then,
Mr. Chair, there are indicators and criteria that the Commission takes seriously to ensure quality of education. One is credentials of faculty members. It is an indication of quality of education. That's why we have very strict standards on the hiring of faculty members. Hindi na ho pwedeng ma-hire ngayon ang faculty member na walang master's degree. That is also a civil service requirement. Another indicator is degree programs. All degree programs that are opened, both in public and private universities, has to be first evaluated by CHED. If it does not pass the standards of the Commission, the degree programs cannot be opened. And when we evaluate degree programs, we look at faculty profile, we look at the curriculum, we look at library resources, etc. So we're very strict with degree programs, and we're very strict if performance is low because we close down degree programs also, Mr. Chair. The third indicator, of course, is the research requirements because universities have responsibilities for teaching, research, and extension. We determine the level of universities by the quality of research that they produce. We decide whether universities can be converted from colleges to universities based on the research output. Kung wala pong research ang isang state college, kahit na ipasa ng Congress yung batas, hindi po siya magiging university dahil ang expectation sa isang university, you produce new knowledge. We look seriously at the extension activities of state universities in particular, and so we rank our state universities from level 1 to level 4. 4 is the highest, and we determine the organizational characteristics and the benefits that state universities could do based on their SUC level. In private schools, we categorize them from autonomous to deregulated to regulated. And the universities that are not autonomous, they are completely under the control and instruction of the Commission. Yung magagaling ho, yung autonomous na, we relax certain requirements for them. Marami po hong criteria ng quality. Ngayon, yung quality ho, from local nagiging international na. So we are looking at schools in terms of their ability to be ranked internationally so that they can measure up not just with Philippine universities but universities in the region. So we have Philippine universities that are now ranked internationally. We're assisting other universities so they can be ranked. So the benchmarking is not only local, the benchmarking now is international, Mr. Chair. So there are other indicators of quality, but maybe we will need more time to discuss this, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Now that I know that you have a ranking can you give me the list of ranked universities and colleges from number 1, the highest rank, to 20 universities or colleges, top 20 or 40. Can you give that to me before the plenary, Mr. Chairman?
Public po ba o private?
Well, both. Combine them and as combined, which of them is number 1, which of them is number 2, until number 20, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, there are several ways that we can submit, Mr. Chair. We can give you data on their ranking based on their licensure exam results. Nirarank ko yung universities dun sa passing rate at saka performance over the past few years in the licensure exams. We can also give data on the ranking of universities based on levels for public and based on status on private. That list for the other two, that is easy to give, pero yung licensure exams po, we will need some time. You'll have to give us what degree programs you need the ranking, and we will generate the data for that. So kung agriculture or fisheries or engineering, pwede pong gawin ng CHED yung listahan ng ranking ng universities based on licensure exams. Yung international ranking, pwede rin namin ibigay yung listahan ng mga Philippine universities that are internationally ranked. And those that have potential to be ranked internationally, they are actually in my PowerPoint presentation, Mr. Chair. There is a list of Philippine universities currently ranked internationally, and there is a list of Philippine universities which we feel we can assist to be ranked internationally. It's on the slides in my PowerPoint, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Chair, but the rank that I want from 1 to 20 is how you regard the quality of education. That is up to you, how you see it. I want to have a rank of colleges and universities combined public and private.
We'll submit, Mr. Chair, yung ranking based on licensure, ranking based on international ranks, and also the universities in terms of centers of excellence that they have, because we award centers of excellence to outstanding degree programs. So we can give you a list of the centers of excellence and the universities that have centers of excellence. That is also a measurement of quality of programs that they deliver, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And my next question is, do you qualify students that you are giving scholarship to? Is there a qualification for them to deserve your scholarship or assistance, financial assistance?
It depends, Mr. Chair, on the type of scholarships. The Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Law has a criteria for financial assistance for tertiary education subsidy. They must be in the listahan ng 2.0 of the SWD. They must be continuing ESG PPA scholars. They must be continuing tulong-dunong scholars, and they must study and reside in cities and municipalities where there is no public university. That is as far as RA 10931 is concerned. We have scholarship based on merit. Labanan ho ng pataasan ng grade, yung merit scholarship ng CHED. There are scholarships that we have with the Department of Agriculture. From ASEF, ang requirement po ay kailangan agriculture and degree mo. There are scholarships for the children of sugar workers that we are implementing with the Sugar Regulatory Administration. And there are medical scholarships for students who are enrolled in the 8 state universities and colleges that have a medical program. So, depende ho kung merit or need-based yung scholarship. Yung tulong-dunong ho, ang requirement ay kailangan enrolled ka at yung income ng iyong pamilya ay hindi lalagpas ng 300,000 pesos.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So may I have, Mr. Chair, a list of your different scholarships or financial assistance to students? Can you give me that list? And may I also have a list of your type of assistance to public or government colleges and universities? Mr. Chair, I just need those lists.
We will submit to the committee, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I am done with my questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Next interpellator would be from the minority, Representative Kimbo. Representative Stella Kimbo. Representative Stella Kimbo is Representative.
Chair?
Okay. Proceed, Rep Kimbo.
I just have some follow-up questions on my earlier interpellation, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask Chairman Popoy to please explain how SUCs charge against the TES fund. So my understanding, Mr. Chair, is that SUCs also get tuition fee subsidies. So paano po ang charging dyan? Kasama po ba ang SUC tuition fees doon po sa naka-budget po for TES sa NEP?
Sa SUCs, they cannot charge the whole 40,000 goes to the student. Because when we give the money, the whole amount is supposed to go to the student because the universities already get subsidy by way of reimbursement of tuition and miscellaneous. What we provide SUCs is some administrative cost because they have to facilitate the test benefits, but they don't get from the test of the students.
So, paano po natin, Chairman Popoy, masisigurado na sapat po ang budget doon po sa SUCs? So, ang nangyayari po is ang budget for tuition para sa isang SUC is determined 1 year before. Pero yung pong pagbibigay ninyo ng scholarships would be determined within the same year. So, paano po yun? Hindi po ba minsan merong disparity po yan?
Hindi po. The reimbursement of tuition and miscellaneous fees has been ongoing since the first year of implementation. The law prohibits them from increasing tuition and miscellaneous for 5 years. So the tuition and miscellaneous that they charge at the start of the implementation of the law is the only amount that will be reimbursed to them by the national government. They cannot increase that, they cannot add to that. So the universities know how much is due to them every year based on their enrollment level. So the number of students determine the reimbursable amount of tuition and miscellaneous fees.
So for example po, ang UP, alam na po nila kung ilan po ang magiging enrollees nila next year. Kaya naisasama na po nila sa kanilang budget request ngayon. Is that how it works po? So that
they have to, because the law requires them to claim the reimbursement from CHED. So once their enrollment is finished, they have to start processing their papers and send it to CHED and show that these are legitimately enrolled students. And after this is evaluated, the total amount is given by CHED to the different state universities based on their current enrollment and based on their tuition and miscellaneous fees.
So tama po ba na they get 20,000 per student? Tama po yun?
Sa UP po?
Yes, sa SUCs po.
Yung wala pong 20,000. Depende po kung ano yung current tuition and miscellaneous fee levels nila. So if their tuition and miscellaneous fees at the start of the implementation of the law, for example, is 10,000 per school year, that is the only amount that they will get per student that they can prove is legitimately enrolled. So depende ho dun sa existing tuition and miscellaneous when the law was passed. So iba-iba ho, may mga mas matataas, may mas mabababa. Yung UP po, ay talagang mataas yung kanilang tuition under the law. Whatever is the tuition at the start of the law is the one that can be reimbursed.
Pagdating naman po sa private HEIs, is that a standard? Yun po ba yung 20,000?
Ano po yun?
Pagdating naman po sa private universities and colleges, ganun din po ba ang patakaran? Iba-iba din po?
Medyo iba ho yung sa private because when Congress passed the law, the target was to give 60,000 per student and the schools can deduct from that the tuition and miscellaneous that they charge, except that this is capped at the level of the nearest souk. That was what the law provided. Ang ginawa ho namin sa first year, we capped it at 20,000. So they cannot charge tuition beyond 20,000. So hypothetically, the students should get approximately 40,000. They can pay other school fees from the 40,000 that they get. The best case scenario in the future is we just give the 60,000 to the student and they decide what school they will go into. But there is a problem if you give the 60,000 to them because you're not sure whether they will really enroll in the school. So yun ho yung problema. They have to be enrolled to benefit from the law. And when they're enrolled, we move the money to the school so that the students can get their share.
So sige po, once po meron po kayong assessment and recommendation and which may require certain amendments or anything po, any bill that would be required so that ang recommendation nyo po ay mapasatupad, let us know po so we can support you. And for my next question po, hindi po nasagot kanina po, yung pong geographic prioritization. Sa ngayon po, napansin ko na for 2019 ay mas mataas po yung growth in enrollments pagdating po sa private school. So mukhang sa 2019, mas marami pong scholars ang sinuportahan po sa private schools. So my question is this related po sa geographic prioritization rule ninyo? Kasi ang pagkakaalam ko po, in areas po na walang SUCs, hindi po magki-kick in itong geographic, ito pong prioritization based on the listahanan. In other words, kapag merong SUC, ang basehan po ng number ng scholar sa isang lugar ay nakabase po sa dami po ng pangalan na nasa listahanan sa lugar na yan. Pero in case po na walang SUC, ano na po ang basehan ng dami po ng scholars sa lugar na yon? And ano po ang implementation po nito sa Bayanihan 2? Kasi sa pagkakaalam ko po, suspended po ito.
Yung wala hong geographic dimension sa ngayon, kasi both public and private schools can get tests if their students are poor. If their students are in the test, whether you enroll in public or private, you get tests. So the poverty dimension is the first cut. And then, if you are a student residing and enrolled in a private school in a city or municipality where there is no public university, you also get tests, whether you are poor or whether you are rich. So that is the geographical access. The other access is need-based access. The second one is geographic access. Kaya ho dumami yung beneficiaries from private schools Although doon sa discussion ho ng House and Senate dati, hindi naman in-anticipate yan. Kasi unang-una, nagpapakita na marami ding estudyanteng mahihirap na nasa private universities, lalo na sa probinsya, sa maliliit na private universities. The other one that drives the number upwards is because there are many areas in the country where there are no SUCs and LUCs, but there are private universities. So their students qualify under TES, so the TES beneficiaries tend to skew over to private universities because they have both TES by virtue of income and TES by virtue of location.
And Mr. Chair, ano po yung quality assurance mechanisms po natin, both in public and private po?
The law requires that the private schools to get TES should be in the registry of CHED. So meaning they pass the minimum standards of CHED to operate as a private university. Yun ho yung standard. Siguro ho, doon sa Congressional Oversight Committee on RE 10931, baka kailangan pag-usapan natin kung kailangan i-tighten yung standards dahil meron ho mga member ng House na nagre-reklamo na may mga private school daw sa kanilang locality na hindi magandang edukasyon. We are open to discussing this with the Oversight Committee to find ways whether we can tighten the ones for private schools. Yung sa SUCSO, ang quality standard is that they are created by law, they pass the requirements of CHED, and their programs are quality assured. Naglabas ho ang commission ng requirement na lahat ng degree programs ng SUCS dapat may certificate of program compliance. Hindi ho yan ginagawa ng CHED dati. Ginawa ho namin ngayon. Tapos yung mga local universities ho, if they cannot get certificate of program compliance of all their degree programs within 2 years, we drop them from the eligible universities. So hinigpitan ho natin yung quality ng degree programs.
That's good to hear po. Doon po sa 600 million po na naka-allot under bayanihan.
Last questions, Rep. Kimbo.
Po, Mr. Chair. Yung pong 600 million po na naka-allocate po under bayanihan 2, considering po na nabanggit ninyo earlier, Chairman Popoy, na marami po kayong administrative challenges, may assurance po ba tayo na yung 600 million na yan ay madidisburse po within the effectivity of Bayanihan 2, which is up to end of December po?
Is that the 600 million for affected students?
Opo, opo.
Ang first hurdle ho is ma-decide between K-12 and higher ed kasi pinagsama ho yung K-12 at saka higher ed. Pinagsama din yung private at saka public. So the biggest obstacle is determining who will qualify. Once that is determined, the disbursement is easy to do. So, kasi pinagsama ho ng Congress lahat eh. Sinama public-private, K-12, higher ed. Yun ho ang kailangang mabigyan ng linaw.
And sino po magde-determine yan, Chairman?
Akala ko po mag-create ng IRR na nakaupo yung Congress doon at saka magbibigay ng gabay. Sabi po, bahala na po kami. So mag-uusap kami ng DepEd. It would have been better if Congress was more precise in determining the beneficiaries to make it easier to implement. But it will now be between DepEd and CHED and also TESDA kasi sinama din ang TESDA doon sa 600 million. Sa tatlong agency o mag-uusap.
Pero kayo po may expertise po dyan. So inaasahan po natin ang listahan na yan. Thank you po, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Rep. Kimbo. Thank you, Chairman Popoy. Next interpellator would be from the majority, Representative Rufus Rodriguez. Representative Rufus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me now?
Yes, the chair recognizes Representative Rufus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And may I first congratulate Chairman Popoy de Vera for successfully implementing the mandates of the CHED in spite of this pandemic
and in spite of the discontinuance of 15 billion pesos for this year. And he is ably assisted, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to recognize the Regional Director of Region 10, Raul Alvarez, who has also been effectively implementing the project, especially May Tulong Dunong. So congratulations to RD Alvarez. And Mr. Chairman, my question is, of the 15 billion discontinuance, how much is for Tulong Dunong? Because, Mr. Chairman, we should all join hands together to be able to convince the DBM to restore that Tulong Dunong where our congressmen in each district are now deluged with applicants. Like in my case, Mr. Chairman, 317 new applicants for 2020 are already waiting. This is the time, Mr. Chairman, that we should join hands to convince the DBM to release, to return the money on Tulong Dunong to the CHED, so that in this time of a pandemic, ma-double jeopardy yung mga bata who applied with us. Their parents have no more jobs. And then we cannot help them to Tulong Dunong to be able to start their studies in college. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask, therefore, Chairman Popoy, what has he done in relation to the Tulong Dunong that we should now, we cannot afford to make that be part of 2021. We need it for 2020, Mr. Chairman. In my case, 317 are waiting, are praying that they will be accommodated for this school year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have the answer of the Honorable CHED Chairman.
The total Tulong Dunong is 3.6 billion pesos. That is part of the discontinued budget for UAPTE under NBC 580, which totals 11.9 billion, including those in 2019. What has CHED done? Well, in January, I asked for it. It was not released. I wrote again, and on April, the DBM wrote me a letter saying that it is discontinued. And there is a breakdown of this, including the universal access to quality tertiary education. It is mentioned here that for 2020 GAA RA number 11465, 10.5 billion will not be released anymore. 3.6 of that is Tulong Dunong. Mr. Chair, that was the augmentation given by Congress in the 2020 GAA.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, therefore, may I therefore request the Honorable Chairman of this committee, presiding now, and all the committee members of the appropriation, let us therefore ask the DBM to restore only 3.6 billion, and all our districts will be given to those that we have recommended to the CHED. And in my case, Cagayan de Oro, 317 applicants for 2020 will be deprived of this support which is needed at this time. DBM should not deny us this request, Mr. Chairman. And through the Chairman Campos, I'm sure that you would understand this. This is one budget in 2020 that should not have been stopped by the DBM. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask your support and the Committee on Appropriations that we appeal to the DBM Secretary Wendell Avisado. Let us have in every district our recommendees be included for 2020 by the release of the DBM of the 3.6 for 2020. And we therefore would like to manifest, I support the full budget of the CHED for 2021 to make sure that in 2021 their budgets are increased so that they can even more successfully implement the projects and the programs of CHED. Can we hear our distinguished Chairman Louis Campos, Mr. Chairman?
Point duly noted, Kong Rufus. It will be taken up at the proper time in the proper venue. Mr. Chair, May I also like to inform the committee that upon the prodding of members of the House, I sent another request dated 18 August 2020 asking for the release of the 3.6, and the DBM answered on September 3, 2020 saying it will not be released. So I think on the part of CHED, I took it up in January, in April, in August. So I leave that now to the action of the House of Representatives, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Noted,
Mr. Chairman, finally,
Chairman,
Mr. Chairman.
Kong Rufus, you're out of time already.
Just 30 seconds, Mr. Chairman. Just to be able.
Down to 10 seconds.
5 seconds will do, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I would like to thank Chairman Popoy for taking up the cudgels of our congressmen and also our recommendees for 2020 Tulong Dunong. And I thank also our chairman who will take this up and lead a charge in the plenary to be able to restore 3.6 billion to our Tulong Dunong. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Popoy, and Chairman Campos. Thank you and good noon to all of us.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Kong Rufus. Next interpellator would be from the minority. Okay, Rep. Castro, Rep. Franz Castro, taking the time of Rep. Janet Garin. No more? So ano na? Okay. So we will move on to the next minority member to interpellate, Representative Gabriel Bordado. Rep. Bordado? Representative Bordado, are you on the line?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Rep. Bordado, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the head of the CHED, Chairman Prospero de Vera, was quoted as saying that the biggest problem is the readiness of faculty members because many of them are not used to flexible learning, and now they are getting some crash courses. Now, Mr. Chairman, what sort of training does the CHED provide to the university faculty members in order to assist them in this transition to remote learning?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The situation is that the big universities, particularly those that have experience already in distance learning and flexible learning, don't need to be assisted. They already have the capability. Some of them have been doing distance learning even before COVID. So hindi po problema yung universities na ito, and we don't need to fund them. What we ask from the big universities, the good ones, is to train the other faculty of other universities. So some of them, we gave funds to train other universities. Some of them were contracted by other universities to train their faculty. The weak area are the faculty of the smaller private universities because they have neither the funding or the expertise to train their own. That is what we targeted through a special program called CHED Higher Education Bayanihan, where 6 very good public and private universities worked with CHED to target the faculty members of small private universities. And they gave it for free. So I'd like to commend this university, FEU, Tarlac Agricultural, De La Salle College of St. Benil, because they did not charge. The others, we paid universities to train others. So we have on record trained about 189,000 faculty members on flexible learning since we started. So what do they get trained on? Of course, how to manage their classrooms in a virtual setting, or in a combination of online and offline, how they make presentations so that they convert their lectures in the regular classroom to lectures in a virtual setting, how they facilitate learning between them and the students, and how they develop modules so that even if they don't see the students regularly, some of these things can be done by the students at home, some of them can be done outside of the class hour. Have we trained them enough? Clearly no, because everyone is adjusting to flexible learning. So the next step of training that we target is improving content now. From knowing how to teach to improving the content of what you teach. For example, faculty members videotaping their own lectures, buying or getting materials online that are good for learning systems. Yun ho yung ginagawa namin yan hanggang next school year na. And that is where CHED is putting its money.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, CHED Chairman De Vera was also quoted as saying that learning institutions have the freedom to adjust their methods to ensure that courses which need laboratories, practical exams, or on-the-job training are accommodated. But is the CHED planning on releasing a universal set of guidelines to better regulate and ensure the safety of both the students and educators during these kinds of setup, Mr. Chairman?
We have completed the guidelines for possible limited face-to-face classes in low-risk NGCQ areas starting January. The guidelines have been completed in consultation with local governments, in consultation with public and private universities. The step that we need to do now, and I intend to do that with Secretary Charlie Galvez, is to look at prototypes on the ground on how the schools are retrofitting their facilities. I hope I can bring the media along and some local governments para meron tayong example on how the other universities can do it. That's why we're not making the guidelines self-executory. Dapat meron mo ng proof of concept na pwedeng kopyahin. Because it's very dangerous to issue guidelines because they are not self-executing. And if there is one university where mistakes are made and students get infected, everyone will demand that all universities not be allowed. That is what we're doing for potential limited face-to-face classes in low-risk MGCQ areas in the second semester. So many of the universities are moving their classes that need laboratory, need OJT, putting that requirement in the second semester in anticipation of allowing limited face-to-face in low-risk MGCQ areas. But as of now, nobody is allowed to do face-to-face classes. That's why the college in Isabela that was in the news that did it, we ordered them to stop and we issued a show cause order for them to explain why they should not be penalized.
Rep. Boydado. Rep. Boydado, you still have any further questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Rep. Boydado, we'll have to suspend proceedings for a few minutes.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
I always wanted to do that. Example na kay Alan, nag-speaker. Chairman Popoy, Yusek Ryan. Let's resume. Sige, Comsec, who's waiting? Si Cong Bordado? Congressman Bordado, we have resumed the proceedings. Are you still with us? Congressman Bordado? Congressman Bordado? Okay, we shall proceed to the next interpellator from the majority, Vice Chairman Ping Tejada. Vice Chairman Jose Tejada. Vice Chair Tejada, are you with us? Last call for Vice Chair Tejada. Okay, next interpellator would be Representative Maria Lourdes Arroyo. Representative Arroyo, are you with us? Rep Arroyo? Okay, so we will proceed to the next Representative Hector Sanchez. Representative Hector Sanchez, please. Are you with us? Okay, next on the list is Vice Chair Ted Haresco. Vice Chair Ted. Last call for Vice Chair Ted. Okay, we will proceed now to the next on the list. Okay, tama. Okay, next on the list is Representative Edgar Chato of Bohol. Edgar Chato, sir, are you with us? Rep Chato.
Yes. Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Manong Ed.
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Chair Popoy de Vera of the CHED family. Just one quick question. I would like to know from CHED if the Higher Education Development Fund that was collected in the previous years through the travel tax, which we incorporated in RA 9593, the Tourism Act with Senator Gordon and myself. This is expected to generate quite a sum of money for the education sector. We would like to be appraised because we have some concerns now with the slowdown of the tourism industry. We do not expect travel taxes to be collected as of this point in time. So we can, however, trust that the remaining funds that we're considered as trust funds are still available. And we would like to know whether the DBM has released this already to CHED. This will be a big boost to higher education, especially at this time when in the pandemic we are emphasizing connectivity and the use of various IT platforms for our higher education. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The accumulated HEDF as of today is 10.6 billion pesos. We are allocating on a yearly basis as part of the net less than 1 billion. In the 2020 net, I requested for additional funding for the HEDF in compliance with the observation of Congress that we are not prioritizing tourism-related projects because the attention of the Commission has been called. And so we requested for additional HEDF number 1 for tourism-related projects in schools that have HRM programs And the other one is we requested funding for the Bangsamoro upon the instructions of the President. So last year, an additional less than 500 million was given last year. 300 million. This year, we requested an additional 500 million. Actually, we requested more than 1 billion, but DBM only allowed 500 million funding for HEDF. That's why our HEDF this year is increasing to 1.2 billion pesos, a little over 204 million increase because of the special request that I sent to DBM for additional funding, Mr. Chair.
In other words, we have not actually fully utilized the funds that were collected out of the travel tax percentage that goes to higher education. Am I right, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Chair, because there are certain limitations in the use of HEDF that goes to CHED, because these are mainly used for tourism-related projects, but does not allow for infrastructure, because the infrastructure component is supposed to be the responsibility of TIESA. That's why our utilization is a little bit slower, because the big ticket items that we can use for tourism areas are basically infrastructure related. What we have done is we have mobilized our state universities to do tourism related projects. For example, documenting and writing tourist materials for the historic sites near the state universities, doing a tourism trail in Region 6, establishing museums that we have. We have a project now with the University of the Philippines in Baguio to train the curators of all the state universities that have a exhibit or that have facilities, to train them on how to take care and make their exhibits good. I hope, Mr. Chair, you can go to the Museo Cordillera in Baguio. It's a beautiful museum done by UP Baguio. We want that to be replicated in the state universities, and we've given them money for this. So it is the related projects of state universities. In Antique, we funded the University of Antique to develop an app that will carry that will contain all the tourism materials in the province. So if somebody goes to Antique, they'll just go to the app and find out where are the historic sites, where are the hotels, transportation, etc. So University of Antique is doing it with the provincial government. We are very ready to sit down with the Department of Transportation and Congressman Chato and the other members of the House to jointly craft a common direction on tourism. Because I know that Congressman Chato was the one who really pushed for this. I have talked to Senator Gordon and Senator Binay in the Senate and also said, we're ready to sit down with them to see what direction we can do after the pandemic. Kasi nag-iba na ho yung parameters ng tourism eh. Mas madaling i-design before COVID. Now it's more difficult to design tourism in a new normal because the parameters and directions have changed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and we're looking forward to that dialogue with CHED in that regard. More especially because our IT also are very much related to tourism, and the IT requirements now of colleges and universities has in fact been also emphasized in our discussions. So pwede po natin magamit yung ibang pundo natin sa Higher Education Development Fund for that purpose, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, ang nakalagay ho the project na we're rolling out now is to upgrade the facilities of SOCs related to HRM. I don't know if our members of Congress know it, but if you look at the facilities of some of the SOCs, yung kanilang HRM facilities, yung graduate ho, hindi makakapagtrabaho sa magandang hotel kasi hindi maganda yung facility. So we'd like to have a training facility where you have a hot and cold, oven, etc. So we can assure industry that our HRM graduates are employment ready. So yun yung isa. Yung connectivity po, we're targeting that for the 3 billion given in the Bayanihan 2 for smart campuses. That is where we are aligning the connectivity. But I would be interested to find out from the tourism champions in the House and the Senate of their thoughts, because we would really like to spend more HEDF. Mataas ho ang utilization namin ng HEDF for the past 2 years, 92% in 2018, 90% as of now in 2019. So pag naglagay naman ho kasi kami ng pera sa HEDF, nagagasta talaga. So with the help of our tourism champions in the House and the Senate, if we can get more, you can be assured that we will be able to spend the money.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And we of course hope that the rest of the remaining funds can also be used, because as I said, we have some concerns on travel tax collection this time with the slowdown of the tourism sector. One final question, Mr. Chair. Secretary of DepEd, Briones, mentioned yesterday about the complementarity of public and private education. How far have we in terms of policy development in relation to achieving this constitutional requirement, both for public and private, keeping a balance of that? Ano kaya po ang observation natin? Are we too far away from that complementarity, or we're getting close to it in terms of policy? Congress has to be well appraised here, because we might be adopting policy frameworks that will be conflicting to each other.
I think the best witness who can attest to that is Cocopeya. Baka naman sabihin nagyayabang ang CHED. But if you ask Cocopeya, it is under this administration where we really have worked with the private universities at levels that has never been done before. In all the policies that the Commission does, the private universities participate by helping craft the policies. All our advisories during the pandemic was crafted in coordination with both public and private universities. I hold sessions with the President. In terms of the standards across public and private universities, we are making sure that the standards are the same. Kasi what the private universities have been complaining in the past is that we baby the SUCs and we make it difficult for the private HEIs. Sabi nila, para mag-create kami ng degree program kung ano-ano ang rini-require nyo, pero yung SUC, papasa lang yung board ng resolution, ma-approve na. So now, the compliance requirement for quality, we're making the same for public and private. We're leveling the playing field. And in the discussion, for example, of amendments to circulars of CHED, in the technical working group, the private universities and public universities are also there. So they learn from each other. I think Cocopeya will attest that we are very open and we have worked with them every step of the way.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. One final thing. This is about Tulong Dulong. When I assumed again as congressman after my 9 years as governor, I was surprised that in the 1st Congressional District of Bohol, there was no funding for Tulong Dulong. And 2020 came where the suspension happened. What was then the guidelines in the previous Congress in relation to allocation of Tulong Dulong? I thought this was equally distributed in all the districts nationwide. Ano lang po, hindi ko alam kasi pagpasok ko, gano'n na yung situation. Walang share yung distrito. I'm supporting the idea na ibalik po yung Tulong Dulong, but my question is, how come in something like 2019 ba yun, pagpasok namin wala siya?
The funds for Tulong Dulong has always been in the past a realignment done by Congress. It is not a part of the NEP that is submitted to Congress. Since it is a realignment of Congress, the position of the Commission always was to defer to the direction that Congress would want, because that is an amendment by Congress. So we defer to the discussions with the House leadership on how the tulong-dunong program will be framed. That has always been my policy since I joined the commission, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I strongly support the budget of CHED. And I would like to thank Chairman Popoy in the commission for the very strong support also to Bohol. Inaantay po namin yung provincial office natin na maipasa din so that we can have a separate independent office, making it easier for the Boholanos rather than going to the regional office in Cebu. Thank you very much and good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Salamat po.
Mr. Chair, our Director for Planning, Nelson Cainghog, is from Bohol. Malakas ho kayo sa commission kasi may taga Bohol who handles a lot of our projects.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Ayun,
Mr. Chairman.
rinig mo ha. Anyway, we'll proceed to the next on the list of interpolators. Okay, we would like to call on Vice Chair Pingping Tejada. Vice Chair Tejada, are you with us? Vice Chair Tejada. Vice Chair Tejada.
Hello, thank you, Chairman Luis Campos. Good afternoon to everyone.
Hey, Vice Chair.
All the time, the whole day, I have been attending the zone for the pre-plenary of the CHED, and would like to congratulate the CHED family because that is my advocacy ever since. Even if the approval of UNIFAS and the free tuition for state colleges and universities, that it meant advocacy, and it made me as a part for the attainment of peace and development in my district, particularly in the 3rd district of North Cotabato, where the University of Southern Mindanao is, and it contributed a lot to the attainment of peace. So we would like that the CHED family will be promoted, although I believe personally of the academic excellence and plans of Capo Poy and all members of the CHED family. But the problem is administrative, particularly, and very much on financial aspects. So, Mr. Chair, would like to ask Capo Poy if indeed the budgets for the free tuition for state universities and colleges for school year 2019 and 2020 were already downloaded to the school because they need this for them to be able to comply and attend to the needs of the school prior to the opening of the school again. Thank you. That would be my first question, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is a slide in my presentation talking about the reimbursement of tuition and miscellaneous fees to SUCs and LUCs for the first semester of 2019-2020. We have downloaded the reimbursement for tuition and miscellaneous to all 112 state universities and colleges. So yung first SEM nabigay na po. Yung second SEM, we have several SUCs and several LUCs that have not complied with the guidelines. So our downloading for second semester is only 81%. Meron pa hong mga hindi kumpleto. Ang isa pa ho, yung 7 billion that will be used for the reimbursement for the second SEM has not been released to us by DBM. So yun hong mga kompleto na yung documents, naghihintay na lang nung pera galing sa DBM. Pagdating ng pera, ang guarantee ho namin within 2 weeks, nandyan na ho sa university. Pero meron hong mga universities na hanggang ngayon hindi pa compliant. I have the list here given to me by our UNIFAST Executive Director. It says 22 public HEIs have completed their documents and they're just waiting for the NCA from DBM. But we have another 17 plus 9 that have various levels of compliance issues. So 17 public universities still have compliance issues, including University of Southern Mindanao. Meron hong non-compliance issues, kaya gusto man naming ibigay yung pondo, hanggang hindi po sila nagpo-comply, we cannot give the money to them.
Any further questions, Kong Tejada, Vice Chair? I think there's something wrong with the audio of Vice Chair Tejada.
Okay na po, Luis, Chairman.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. And just like any other congressman, we are concerned about the Tulong Dunong program, which actually has helped our students, specifically because there are schools, we have state universities and colleges in areas, and we have private schools, but I would like to ask whether is it true to all that all private schools are covered by the Unifast program? Because in my place, there is only one school that is accredited to be under the Unifast, and we need the Tulong Dunong for us to be able to help other students to get enrolled in schools where they do not qualify to SUCs and Unifast private schools covered and accredited under the Unifast. Is there a chance that students will still avail of the Tulong Dunong program of congressmen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Number one, the continuing Tulong Dunong scholars are automatically covered under the tertiary education subsidy. So they will continue to receive their Tulong Dunong now under TES until academic year 2018-2019. The academic year 2019-2020, we are just finishing downloading and giving the money to them. We will migrate them to the TES eventually. For 2020, there is no Tulong Dunong appropriation because the augmentation given by the House of 3.6 billion was classified as for later release. And I have written several letters to DBM, and DBM had said the 3.6 will not be released because the FLR means funds should be available and DBM will be the one to decide it. So wala pong Tulong Dunong for 2020.
2021 ho siguro. 2020 meron.
Wala pong 2020. Wala po. Kasi yung 3.6 hindi po na-release sa CHED. Yung 3.6 billion.
Okay, that would be, Mr. Chair, that would be a matter of concern of congressmen because for this representation education is very important, and we should look into the matter. That's what we would like the future to be, Mr. Chair, because all other temporary matters that we need to attend to are very prioritized, but we cannot sacrifice the education and the future of the education in our country. That would be congratulations, Kapopoy and the CHED family. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Luis. Good afternoon, and God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Tejada. We'll now proceed to the next interpellator, Congresswoman B.H. Herrera. B.H. Herrera D. Kong B.H., are you with us? Kong B.H. Congresswoman B.H. Last call for Congresswoman B.H. Proceed to the next one. Deputy Speaker Lauren Legarda. Deputy Speaker Lauren. Last call for Deputy Speaker Lauren. Okay, so Deputy Speaker Lauren being the last, we will now go back to Representative Mark Go for a 10-second manifestation. Representative Mark, are you with us?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I should have made this manifestation earlier, but due to time earlier, I failed to do so. At this point, I know that the Commission on Higher Education plays a key role in ensuring the growth and development of our country in terms of education. Having said this, Mr. Chair, I would like to manifest my 100% support to the budget of the Commission on Higher Education and recommend that we add additional 500 million for their capital outlay. This will definitely support not only the mandate of the Commission on Higher Education, but the different constituents of the Commission in fulfilling their function in enhancing the quality of education in the country, Mr. Chair. And I know that the Commission on Higher Education has been doing a good job during the last so many years in uplifting the different SUCs as well as the other private educational institutions in the country. And there is no reason, therefore, that we do not support the budget plus the additional 500 million budget for their capital outlay. So again, thank you very much, and we hope the best for the Commission on Higher Education, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Mark. Chairman Mark, you're the last speaker. Maybe you can move to terminate the proceedings.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I so move that we terminate the deliberation of the budget of the Commission on Higher Education. I so move, Mr. Chair.
Do I hear any objections? There being none, these proceedings are terminated. Thank you.